Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. I've got one of my favorite, I say new guitars, it's not new, but new to me, with Chris Tapp from the Cold Stairs. He's just a great guy and an amazing blues rock player. Like you just turn that up over your loudspeakers and zone out and listen to him do his thing and you're going to feel great. A couple of quick messages. Make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com/subscribe, and you can subscribe to the audio and the video of the show. And Carlos Santana, Joe Walsh, if you know those guys, I'd love to have them on my show. Please connect us. All right, let's talk about Chris and the Cold Stairs. Cold Stairs are a two-piece rock and blues band from Evansville, Indiana. I want to say that again because you need to process that. They're a two-piece rock band, not very common, and they make it work, and they sound great. They've got a massive sound. They play very old school, authentic, original blues rock songs. The band's released 4 full-length albums, loads of singles and EPs, and they've been around since 2012. That's when they started releasing records. Their last album is called Ways. It's a great record, and it's really cool. What they did is they had 3 EPs. They had a hard rock EP, a blues EP, and an acoustic roots EP, and then they released they were each called Ways, and then they released the full album Ways. The album has songs currently featured in 12 editorial playlists across the streaming platform. Joe Bonamassa called the Cold Stairs his greatest musical discovery of 2019. And both of the rock single releases from Ways have been Classic Rock Magazine's Track of the Week. The Cold Stairs is playing on Bonamassa Festival on the cruise, which is sold out. Their songs have been licensed by the NFL. They've been featured on Animal Kingdom on TNT, Monster Energy commercial, ESPN Network, the X Games, and Dodge Motor Company. They've got not 1, not 2, but 3 albums coming out this year. And the first one starts recording, I guess, at Sam Phillips Studio in Memphis. Chris, thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here, man. I really dig your playing. I'm glad we got to connect.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you for having me, man. Love the podcast. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you, man. Feelings mutual. So before we get started, just explain to the listeners what prompted you guys to put a 2-piece band together, and how do you perform as a 2-piece band? Like, you obviously sing and play guitar, and by the way, you do both of those really freaking well. And but how does that work live and in the studio? And do you ever play more than guitar? Do you use loopers, etc.? Fill in the blanks, whatever you like.
Yeah. We didn't set out to be a 2-piece. I didn't want to be a 2-piece. We didn't really set out to do this band. We were in a band prior to this. Little backstory: we're both from kind of small towns in Kentucky. I grew up about an hour south of where I live now, and people always they'll ask, "How did you and Brian get together?" I wish I had a more romantic story, but there was just like 2 other drummers in the town that I lived in, and within 60 miles. One of them went off to Berkeley. I'd played with him when we were in high school, and then the other one was involved in drugs, whatever else. Had a crazy girlfriend. So yeah, Brian was a stable dude and a hardworking guy, and we liked the same music, so we just ended up playing together. But we were in a band prior to this called Shelby. And we're doing pretty well with that. And we did some showcases and ended up the labels that watched us passed on us. And really, at that point, I was doing stuff, trying to get a record deal. It just wasn't really my thing. I was kind of desperate at that time, and thought that rock and roll should stop at 25. And if I didn't get a record deal, I was done. But when we finished that, I said I was finished. My daughter was just born, and we, after a little bit, Brian called and said, "Hey man, let's get together and just have beer and jam." And we did that. One night, a mutual friend stopped by and he said, "Hey man, I'm playing a gig. Why don't you guys come open?" I was like, "Yeah, we're not a band, And at the time, I needed some money and was like, "Hey, $300." I was like, all right, we'll do it. And I told him, Brian, at the time, I go, "Man, I don't want somebody to think that we're the White Stripes," because I love the songwriting and I love the idea behind the White Stripes or like the Black Keys. But at the time, no, there wasn't any bottom end, and I loved the bass. So I figured out kind of a throw together rig with 4 or 5 amps to be able to make it sound really bassy. and have some bottom end. And we played that show, and it was a packed show, and the response was just insane compared to every other band I'd ever been in. And I was like, holy shit, you know what?
Wow.
What are we going to do? My brother worked for Dell at the time, and I had him help me with a software program. This was like before the guitar rig stuff came out, but he kind of helped me with a thing to turn the guitar signal into a bass signal prior to hitting the bass amp. And I worked on that. We kind of played around, and we worked on that for probably about 6 months. And we finally figured that out. And by that time, we'd played a couple other shows. Now, again, we weren't trying to start a band. And all the songs that we were doing at this point, I was like, you know, screw it. I don't really care what anybody else likes. I've tried to play stuff I thought other people like. This thing, I'm just going to write songs that I did.
Had you ever written or played your original songs out at that point?
Oh yeah, I started writing songs when I was like 4 or 5. I'd been writing songs all my life, but I had always, at least in bands, tried to write songs that I thought would appease somebody at a record label or something where I could actually make some money doing this stuff. So at this point, you know, I was like, nah, I'm just going to do my own thing, which it would be my biggest advice to anybody starting out is just be yourself, just do your own thing. But that took off. And then from there, we had a friend that was working at the Hard Rock Cafe in Nashville. He said, hey, you guys should come down and play this contest. And I was like, no, you know, we're not really even a real band. But he goes, it's $100 and free food. So we ended up doing that. And then we won that for Nashville. And it was like 1,500 bands that had put in for it.
Wow.
So at that point, I was like, okay, we're going to have to figure out how to do this. But for about the first 3 years that we played, I used a laptop to get the bass sound. And then one night we were playing a gig at 3rd and Lindsley with Rival Sons.
Oh, wow.
Right before we get ready to go on.
That's a big gig.
Yeah, it was a big gig. We had record label people out to see us that night. It was a lot of stress already. And I get ready to walk on the stage. I look over the laptop and it says it's updating.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, I'm literally, I about had a stroke. So I spent a lot of time after that trying to develop. For about another year, I spent a year or so really honing in and trying to develop a way to play guitar and bass live, and make it convincing and make it sound great. And I eventually got there, but it took a bit, and at points it's challenging, and I always thought, man, it'd be so good to get a bass player to fill out these parts. But by the time I wanted to get a bass player, we had enough success and everybody loved us as a 2-piece that we just kind of stuck with it. So
so you have a way to put the bottom end on in live.
Yeah.
And in the studio, do you play bass?
I play all the instruments other than drums. Yeah. So
wow. Okay.
I do I do guitar, bass, organ, mandolin if we want, if we're doing something like that. I'm not great at banjo, but I can kind of do a 6-string banjo.
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah. And that leaves us with a lot of control without having to bring anybody else in. But live, I'm not super. I used to be kind of secretive about how I did it. I don't really care at this point. But I go out of my guitar into a amp switcher that goes to 3 or 4 amps, usually 3 nowadays. But amp 1 is just 440, it's just regular, tuning. The second amp is 1 octave down, and I use a pedal that just drops at 1 octave. Sometimes I use a synth pedal in between 2, but and then that goes to a second regular guitar amp. But then the third amp is a bass amp, and it processes a bass sound before it hits the bass amp. So when it hits the bass amp, it feels like a bass. But then the way I usually explain it to sound guys is just think of us as AC/DC. Malcolm's always in. That's amp 1.
Right.
That amp always stays on. Angus comes in and out for bridges and choruses and lead stuff, and then the bass comes in when we hit the choruses. So dynamically, it makes it makes
sense.
Makes sense. It's interesting live, to see a band. I I see other bands, and sometimes the dynamics is not as strong as what it could be. I think it forced us to do that, where the verses would kind of be thinner or down. And when the chorus hits and you have 3 octaves and all 3 octaves are playing the exact same note at the exact same time, it can be, very heavy.
Yeah, it's a wall of sound, man.
It is. And I always have thought of the 3 amps as 3 different identities. I'm a little loco artist on that stuff, but amp 1, I set up a certain sound and I set up a certain EQ, and that player that's probably me. The second amp is a little bit fuzzy or nasty, and that guy's a little bit of a punk and a little bit he's a whatever. And then the bass player is very straightforward, big thick sound, and I've always kind of thought of it in that way, so that when you hear it, it doesn't sound like I stepped on a boost pedal. It sounds like the second guitar player comes in. I'll run the amp stereo left and right, so a lot of times the second amp will kick on. Everybody looks over the left of the stage to see, because you hear that music coming out, hear the guitar coming out of there, but there's nobody over there.
So when you're soloing, you step on a switch and then it engages on left channel.
Yeah, a lot of times I'll have all 3 amps on for a solo, and then I hit an additional synth pedal or a boost pedal or something else to even jump it up even more than that. And I don't do a whole lot of solo in this band, because when I stop playing one thing, we don't use any loopers or any sequencers. We never have, and I never would do that. But when I drop out, it drops out. So I have to kind of play in the holes, which is made it more creative too.
It must make you a much better player too, because you're forced to have that awareness all the time.
I don't know. It's made me that much a better player. I'm sure it has. It has made me a very specific player.
Yeah.
I read a thing with Rick Nielsen one time about Cheap Trick, and he said, "We're not the best band in the world, but we're the best band at being Cheap Trick."
Right.
I'm nowhere near a lot of the guitar players that you have on here and the guys that I admire, but specifically for what I do in my gig, I feel confident in doing that, and I've done it now off and on for 10 years. So.
Well, you should, because you sound great. There's nothing not to feel confident about, man.
Thank you, man.
I really enjoyed listening to your music. I guess it's an upside, man. If there's only 2 people in a band, there's not a lot of arguing going on, I would imagine, either, comparatively, right?
No, there's not. And we've had that problem. Anybody that's ever played in the band, you know how that is. We've had that all our lives. You get somebody that's got a drug addiction, or somebody that's got a loony ex-wife or girlfriend or whatever else. And Brian and I have played together off and on, I guess now, considering the other band, for like 15 years. And that's a big part of being in a band and being successful, is being able to get along with who you're with, So I don't call him in the middle of the afternoon and ask him how he's feeling, or ask him how he feels about Trump, or ask him, about, things like that. And when we're on the road, we spend time listening to music or talking about things, but I'm listening to podcasts, he's reading books, whatever else. You have to be smart about making that work and making that last. And a lot of it is learning how to deal with other people. But yes, that with small footprint, we can fit in a hotel room, we can fit in a truck or a van with all our gear. There's no, that has made it easy, and it makes it easy to split the check at the end of the night.
So. Hell yeah. Well, I hope you guys will come down to Tampa, because I'd love to see you play. So I'm sure you'll be down here eventually.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Okay. So when you initially put yourself out there, when you guys put yourselves out there, did you get any like resistance as far as booking gigs or trying to get a label support, because you were a 2-piece band? Because to me, like, I think this is a great lesson. It didn't work out. You didn't have another bass player. You could have said, "Oh, fuck it. we can't do this." But you didn't. You said, let's figure out how we could do this. Yeah. Which, to me, when I always hear that, it reminds me, like, when something happens, don't be like, I've learned as I've gotten older, like, if something's denied me, it doesn't mean no. It means that's not the way I'm going to get done whatever it is I want to get done. And that's what you guys did here. So I was curious, did you get resistance from other people, like, who the hell wants to book a 2-piece rock band kind of thing?
At the time that we came out, the black keys and the white stripes were really hot. So we didn't
Okay.
get, as far as being a two-piece, we didn't get a lot of resistance. We had a lot of issues going, hey, we don't do that. We're not the white stripes. We're not the black keys. Yes, we like the blues. No, we don't sound like that. And we have bass live and this and that. So, you know, we got the same resistance that any band would get. Maybe people try to put us in a niche or tried to categorize us because we were a two-piece kind of blues rock band. So we intentionally didn't dress like we were in the 60s.
Right.
We dressed normal. I wrote about topics that I knew the black keys and the white stripes wouldn't write about. And there's a couple bands out now that still kind of do that thing, but they had already done that thing, and both those bands did it great. Now, I don't have any kind of interest in copying somebody else. If I was going to copy somebody, I wanted to copy the people that I idolized. But I'll tell you one thing that we did that I had learned early on, with the other bands that I'd been in and this one as well. When you're first starting out and you're trying to call clubs, we'd call a club in Nashville. I'd say, hey man, I'm in my nice Southern Kentucky voice. Hey, I'm playing in a band and we'd really like to play there. And, we're pretty good, whatever else. Well, mail us tape, send us an MP3, whatever else. And you wouldn't get called back. And I got a couple stories that will kind of give you some background on why I'm not a quitter, but I'm not. And so I said, that's not going to work for me. We're going to get this gig. And I would tell Brian, I would say, I'll have this gig in 3 months. So I created a fake manager name, a fake management business, a fake booking agent. And then I called him and I said, hey, the Cold Stares are coming through town. They'll be here for these days. The normal rate's $1,000, but since we have a day off, we'll work with you. The band's going to draw this many people and it's going to do this. And then they started taking us serious and we would get the gigs. But
dude, that is so awesome. What made you right on, man? That is like, I love hearing stuff like that. What made you do that? Like, where'd you get the idea for that?
You ever seen the movie Fletch, Chevy Chase?
Yeah, with Chevy Chase. Yeah. Yeah.
I think I watched that with my grandfather probably whenever I was a little kid, but just those different, having those different personalities and just kind of different roles. But I could tell, people would say, man, you're not going to get booked there because you don't have a booking agent. That's a big venue. And I'm like, well, and we had tried to get booking agents and we'd sent stuff to people and whatever else. And if I really want something, I'm not going to give up until I get it. And then I think you try 4 or 5 different ways. And if it doesn't happen, then you keep trying until you figure it out. But once we got in and started playing, we did great. And then we got to a point, especially in Nashville, where I wouldn't have to call about gigs. They would call and say, hey, would you be interested in playing next month? Or we have this band coming in. Would you be interested in opening? So
that's a real nice feeling. I bet you the first time those calls came in, that you must have felt like all your work was validated,
Yeah.
Like you've built something on your own now.
It does a couple of things. It makes you go, okay, that worked this situation. So how can I apply that math to other situations on things I'm trying to accomplish? And it gives you the confidence to go, if we do get in that situation, we can perform. My dad used to say, the little town that I grew up in, somebody would say that I was good at songwriting or good at that. My dad would always say, well, this is a little town, Chris, if you want to know, go to Nashville and play down there and see how you do down there. And my dad was a football coach the whole time I was growing up and didn't know anything about music, but was super supportive of me.
That's great.
But once I did that and I said, hey, Pop, we're playing one of the biggest venues in Nashville and whatever else. It helps with all that,
That's great, man. Great idea. Congratulations. You had mentioned your songwriting. With respect to your songwriting, there's like a lot of biblical references in your lyrics, and you're a really good storyteller. Really good. You're welcome. You hear my cat?
I do.
It's this, we got a bunch of cats. This one is like my he wants to hang out. But if I can let him in, the whole place will be upside down. He'll stay there for 20 minutes. So talk about that, the songwriting, the biblical references, and also I know your family and your personal history you mentioned affects your song or developed your songwriting. Talk about that.
Yeah. The biblical references, I have always been super fascinated with history in general. From the time I was a little kid, my great aunt and my grandfather were probably the two most important people in my life growing up. I was really close. I had a great relationship with my dad, but I did not have a good relationship with the woman he was married to. And I had some things probably going on early on that kind of shaped me as a songwriter. One of those things is I was adopted. So from the time I was young until I was probably 10, I didn't feel right at home. There was just something, you just have this instinct. Yeah. And I just knew this woman wasn't my mother. And then at 10, I found out that I was adopted. My birth mother was 15 and a cheerleader over in Eastern Kentucky and pregnant and scared to death. And my grandfather over there was in politics, and for one reason or another, thank God she didn't abort me, but she gave me up for adoption, and I went to Western Kentucky with my dad and his family. But I was pretty angsty growing up. I had that turmoil from, and again, adoption. I can't say enough, great things about that.
Sure.
But there are other aspects to it. And as somebody then, as a young kid, I was like, why would my mom give me up?
Yeah, man, there's a lot of shit to work through there because there's a lot of unanswered questions. I totally get that, man.
Yeah. I struggled with that for a while. And then, whenever I was in high school, and I started writing songs whenever I'll back up. I started playing piano whenever I was 4. I was watching the Lawrence Welk show or one of those shows with my granddad. And somehow the topic of playing piano came up. My granddad said, "Hey, if you learn how to play piano, you do all kinds of things, and you'll have any woman in the world you want." Yeah.
Your granddad was pimping you out, making you a stud.
He was a character, man.
How to be a player.
Yeah. He had one summer watching TV, and there was Jerry Lee Lewis with Jimmy Swaggart, and they were both playing pianos. And Jimmy Swaggart was a great piano player, but when I saw Jerry Lee Lewis, I already was angsty anyway. And then I saw that, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's me, dude." And so I begged him to start me on piano. And one of the earliest memories I have was whenever I was a little kid, we had a piano recital, and they had my teacher had taught me this song, but I was playing a lot by ear even then. I had the music, but I would hear her play it, and I would play it a little differently. And the other thing I wanted to do was play it really fast. And she didn't want me to play it fast, but some classical piece. But I was probably 6 years old, and man, I did a recital, and I played that thing about, it was like speed metal meets classical piano. It was like 600 beats a minute.
Funny, man.
But I did it really well. And my dad, when I walked off stage, he was just different. He had this different look on his face, and he took me to Kmart, and he took me to the Hot Wheels, and he said, "Pick out whatever you want." And he said, "I'm really proud of you." And I think from that moment on, I was like, "This is what I'm going to do." But so fast forward to about 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, I'm taking songs off the radio, and I'm replacing the words, and then I'm giving them to little girls in the classroom.
Oh my God!
So it's kind of how I learned how to write songs. Whenever I was, when I was super young, I would hear songs on the radio, and I would listen to the chord changes. I would figure them out on the piano. I'd change the tempo, and I'd just rewrite the words. And I kind of became a student of listening to songs and trying to understand, how they were put together. And I would do that on piano. When I turned about 13, two kind of important things happened. The guitar player for the band I was playing in quit, and I asked for a guitar. My dad got me a guitar, and I switched from piano to guitar. When I did that, I never bought a guitar book, and I never went to a guitar instructor, but I knew what an E minor was. You know, I knew an E, G, and B made an E minor, and I knew if you sharp the third, it would make it major. So what I did with the guitar, I didn't even learn the notes on the guitar. I would just go to the piano and hear it out. I'd play an E, and I'd find an E on the guitar. And I started putting chords together on the guitar, but they weren't like traditional guitar chords that you would learn. So I would be in band, and the guy would say, "Hey man, it's an A minor." And I'd play, and he'd go, "That's not an A minor." I was well, it's an A, C, and E.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like the A minor that I played. So
you just learned all these inversions, basically.
Yeah, just kind of weird things. I loved open strings, and I loved some dissonance in the chord, you know, and I knew how to make augmented chords and weird stuff on the piano, and I kind of transposed that on the guitar. But what it did was it made me learn guitar a completely different way than my best friend at the time was playing guitar. We kind of started at the same time, and he bought Mel Bay books, and he had a teacher, and he was very traditional. And, you know, early on, we were very different players. And that's very beneficial to me becoming, having my own identity on guitar. And I teach guitar now, but I teach it in a way that I always, try to reinforce that it's never, you know, Jimi Hendrix couldn't play Yngwie. It's not based on how many notes you can play or anything else. It's discovering your identity on guitar. And then, you know, Neil Young is a fantastic guitar player in my opinion.
Hell yeah.
But, you know, but he's not playing Paul Gilbert licks, and nothing to take away somebody like, you know, a great proficient guitar player. But I think as history will go down, it's identity more than it is notes. But so I learned how to play guitar. I'm playing in bands, and I'm 13 or 14. A few things happened around that time. I was very interested in history. I was very close to my grandfather and my great aunt, and I would ask my great aunt. She lived through the Depression.
Now they were brother and sister?
No, my grandfather was married. His wife, sister, was my great aunt.
Gotcha.
And she didn't have kids, and her husband had died the year before I was born. And for whatever reason, we just kind of, she just kind of took care of me. She took me under her wing. She had a huge kind of plantation house about 15 minutes from where I grew up, and had a farm and had horses. She'd walk out in the backyard and grab a chicken, break its neck. You know, she was tough, you know, mean chick.
That's cool.
But I was interested in the family and kind of history, and I would ask her about her father a lot, and she wouldn't talk about it. She didn't want to talk about her dad, which seemed really weird to me. And finally one day I asked my grandfather, you know, and he didn't want to talk about it either, but he said, I'll tell you, but I'm asking you not to ever bring it up with her. And what happened was her father was a auctioneer and a moonshiner during Prohibition. And I think it was 1931 or 32, he would go on these auctions, and then he'd run moonshine while he was out doing it. Her mother, my great, she's my great aunt, so my great grandmother, was ill, and he would leave my grandmother and her two sisters there at the house a lot, and go try to, you know, run moonshine and make money. Well, there was a sheriff and a deputy, and this is a crazy story. It's going to sound like something out of a Western, but the sheriff and the deputy came down to the house while my great grandfather was gone, and my great grandfather, and raped my aunt.
Oh,
and
my God, man.
They were kind of like the town bullies, and some stuff had been going on.
Yeah, this is like some shit you see in a movie, man.
It is.
This is terrible.
And so her father his name was Archibald Mooney. He came back and found out what had happened. And a couple of days later, he took his truck down to the end of the street and hid it in a field. And he came back up to the house with a shotgun, and he laid underneath the porch. And when the sheriff and his brother, who was the deputy, came back to the house, they were going to do it again. And he walked out on the porch, and he blew both their heads off.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Wow. Hold on a minute, man. I got to process this. This is heavy, man. This is like, this is something you read about or like you see in a movie. Yeah. Holy shit. I got goosebumps here, man.
Like as a 13-year-old kid, he's telling me this, and, I had grown up watching old Westerns and stuff with my granddad. And I'm like, I was the same way. I was like, this is insane.
Yeah.
It was also very sad at the same time. First of all, that my great aunt had gone through that. And then
terrible.
Secondly, her father, after this happened, he went to jail for 6 days, and they let him out. And evidently the sheriff and the deputy had done this to some other people in the community. And my granddad said, he said, well, that was justice back then when you did something for the right reason. And he said, you wouldn't go to jail or get, whatever. But he, after that, later on, my great aunt had told me that he really suffered with that and became an alcoholic, and he died pretty young
because of carrying it's a tough, you have kids, I have kids. It's like, you wouldn't think twice about doing something like that.
And I personally, I never met him. I personally feel like, kind of from the stories, that he probably felt a lot of guilt for leaving them and allowing the situation to happen more than killing them. But it's funny. When I was in high school, there was a kid in the class, and his last name was the sheriff and the deputy's last name. And he said, did you know your great-great-grandfather killed my great-grandfather and my great-uncle? And I was, yeah, actually I did. So after my granddad told me that story, when I turned 16, I went to the courthouse in Webster County where they lived, and I got the old microfiche stuff from the newspapers. And
I remember that.
I read about it. And then I wrote a couple stories and essays about it in high school. But that,
wow, Chris.
Yeah.
That's just heavy shit, man. Give me a second. Wow. Yeah, holy shit, man. I mean, wow.
It's crazy. And some of my family didn't want to talk about it and were ashamed about it. My family is very Kentucky in that way, that they were very proud. And, my dad and my granddad weren't as much like that. They were pretty open book, but a lot of them didn't want to talk about it. But so as a teenager,
which is unfortunate, because like, people need to know about this stuff, because it is a reality, and you need to protect people, and you got to be able to protect people, because there are assholes like that running around doing shit like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
But as a songwriter, that was probably the first time, because I'd already been writing songs for a long time, and at that point I was like, oh man, I need to write a song about this. You
got several albums here, Chris.
and it's funny, I've probably repositioned that story quite a few times in other songs. I've never written a song just specifically about that, and I don't know why, but I have written a lot of songs that deal with death and deal with murder, and so that became very influential in my song. People say, well, dude, you don't write any happy songs, you write all dark songs. But I just write what naturally is. I am a happy guy. I'm very
I don't get that. When I'm listening to your lyrics, I don't get that, oh, these are dark. I get that this is intense, and it's some this is a story here. I don't know what the story, I mean, now I know a little bit about the story. I didn't get that it was dark. I just got it that there's some story here that's pretty intense.
Yeah. So that was a big influence on my songwriting. And then the biblical stuff, I was raised, I didn't miss church whenever I was growing up, and I was raised by a dad and a grandfather, pretty much, that that was pretty traditional small town Kentucky.
Sure.
And it's kind of odd to say, because I know so many people kind of struggle back and forth with faith, but I I think that's one of the gifts that my granddad gave me. I never really doubted that, to me, that there was a God, or that there was whatever else. But early on, those stories in the Bible, a lot of them sounded like what my great aunt had been through. You have all these people getting killed, and the cities being burned, and you have heartache and whatever else. And those stories just crept in when I started to allow myself to just write on things that seemed fantastical to me. Things that seemed, I don't know, the biblical thing also tied into a time whenever I first started writing that kind of stuff, when I discovered the blues and really started listening to like Son House. And I was like, oh, this is great. He's on track 1. He's singing about, somebody got killed, and somebody, the levee's going to break and the whole town's going to drown and whatever else. And then on track 3, he's singing about, church stuff. And early on, religious people that I was probably around, and some older people were like, hey, Chris, you don't need to sing. You can't sing about this death stuff, or somebody killing, or drinking on Saturday night. And you can't sing that in church both at the same time. It's hypocritical. And that I'm not much on being told what to do. And it doesn't seem hypocritical at all to me, because everybody that I had known that I'd ever seen in church, I'd also seen drunk on Saturday night, or I'd seen have divorced or fought.
Right on, man.
It's just, it's humanity. It's really who we are. And
right.
I think I had a discussion with Mark Ford from the Black Crowes about this once.
Sure.
And he said, the worst thing about Jesus is his followers. And I'd agree with that.
I can't tell you how many guys came on the show that were raised in very religious homes and have alluded to that exact thing. Like, the worst thing about religion is religion. It's and faith and religion are mutually exclusive, except when it has to do with money, and then suddenly they tie them up pretty damn quick,
Exactly. Yeah. The God that I know and that I serve is not the God of Joel Osteen, and not the God of these people. It's not. So anyway, I do whatever I want to do. I write what I want to write, and I don't really care what anybody thinks about as far as that stuff. And I think now we're in a time when people know that I'm not trying to shove anything down anybody's throat, and these stories and this stuff interest me. And there's a lot of things. I don't write full albums like that. I have no interest in being a Christian band. I'd rather be a guy that has beliefs that plays in a rock and roll band. When I look up a plumber in the book, I don't go, okay, who's the Christian plumber? Give me the best plumber you got. I want to be the best, player that I am. If you ask me how I feel about something personally, I'll tell you. But anyway, so
I like that.
All that stuff kind of contributed into the songwriting. And then a couple other things happened. My granddad, who I was really close with, committed suicide when I was in my 20s. And
oh shit, what happened? And
was
he ill?
Yeah, he had fought depression for years and years and years. I remember when I was a little kid, my dad taking me to the hospital to see him. And my granddad was always in such a good mood that I just couldn't accept it that he actually had depression. But he was clinically depressed and struggled with that for a lot of years.
Sorry about that, man. That had to be tough.
Yeah. And I had lived with him for about a year. I'd moved out of the house because I couldn't get along with my dad's wife, and I lived with my granddad for about a year. And I had been out of the house for about 3 months, and I would check on him about, every couple of days. We'd have lunch and do things, and everything seemed to be fine. And I had a call from my grandmother, and she said they called him Son. She said, something's wrong with Son. He's in the kitchen floor. And I was actually the first one there, and I found
dude. Holy shit.
Yeah. And so that had probably a pretty profound change on my songwriting as well too. And just if I write things if I write things from a dark perspective, or just like Break My Fall or some of the other songs, I'm sure it all kind of stems from that. And having those few things happen, probably, it didn't turn me into a dark person, but it's things that, those blues guys were living on plantations and stuff like that, and suffered through, seeing their fathers and people in slavery and whatever else. And they wrote dark songs. And I don't compare anything that I do to a blues background, but if I have a darkness to my songwriting and whatever else, it's just from a few things probably that happened, growing up, when I'm writing honestly. So.
Wow, man. Thank you for sharing all this. This is really interesting. It was very kind of you to share this, man. That's some heavy stuff. Hopefully, like you, very different, but I had a rough early start. So I always say to myself, well, hopefully I got all this shit out of the way. Yeah. And hopefully hopefully the same thing for you, like any of the big drama and tragedy is in your past,
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I had it on my heart to tell about my granddad for a while, and didn't want to. And then I posted it on Facebook, kind of a little bit of the backstory once. And I had a lot of people reach out to me afterwards. Actually, I had some people come up at shows that were talking about their kids or their wife, or people in their family. And there's so many people that have dealt with tragedy. And if you haven't dealt with it yet, you're going to soon.
You're going to, yeah. It's on your list, man. Yeah.
It's for whatever reason, it's part of humanity, and it's part of the lessons that we learn, that we're all going to learn sooner or later. So the quicker that you can go, okay, this is part of life. What can I take from this? And not only that, how can I use this to help other people that are going to go through similar situations? The better that you can deal with it. But yeah, it's tough, but like you said, it's what everybody deals with sooner or later. And
yeah, life's not for the weak, man. I hate to say it. You're going to nobody gets out unscathed for the most part. You're going to get something. It may not be what you're thinking, but you're going to have something. It's just, you live long enough, it happens.
The quicker you learn how to say, instead of why me, and you learn to say, why not me?
Why not me? Yeah, man. Yeah,
you see people that have lost children, or that have things happen to, So anyway, that it's part of life. Not to be Debbie Downer or whatever else.
No, man, it was just a story. Yeah. It is what it is, man. You're certainly not Debbie Downer, man. You're 180 degrees opposite. You've picked yourself up and done what you wanted to do, and fought through a bunch of bullshit, and not letting that. Because look, a lot of people, as you know, would say, "Hey, I can't get, poor me. This happened, that happened." Well, you got choices. It's not poor me unless you think poor me. Like you said, you
sound like my grandfather. That's the way I was raised. Not to. You can't. I don't. The word no doesn't really. I don't really recognize that, and I don't. I just. You have to minimize the damage and move forward.
Yeah.
There's always somebody that's got it worse. There's always somebody that's having to fight harder. There's always somebody that's, so anyway, that's part of, but all that stuff goes into the best songs and the stuff that I go through. And I recognize now that I would not be as good of a songwriter as I am, and as good of probably human being or whatever else, professional, if I hadn't gone through all that stuff. So really now I kind of own it.
Yeah. Well, man, I like you even more now, because especially when you said the magic words, you said, "I don't like being told what to do." I'm like, right on, man. I'm allergic to that. It's terrible. It's a blessing and a curse, really, but I'm not like obsessed with telling others what to do, but I just don't like being told what to do myself, man. It's tough. Talk about your writing. We've been talking about you're very prolific, and from what I've read, you're very disciplined definitely when it comes to writing, but now that I've come to know you a little bit, with everything, I would say, you know, when you make your mind up to do something,
Yeah.
where do you, two things, what do you get out of that? Like being so driven, where does that come from? And also, how does it make you feel? There has to be something in it for you at the end.
I'm trying to think the best way to explain it. It's I don't know. I'm probably undisciplined on some things. You know, I wish I ate better. I wish you know, there's things I go, well, I should cut out more time to be with my son. There's always things that you know you should be doing that you're not doing. But I think the discipline with the songwriting and the music stuff is probably from years of me not being able to get done, me not getting a record deal at 21, you know, or me being told, nobody's really listening to that, or nobody wants to hear some white kid sing the blues, or, you know, whatever else.
Righteous indignation pushes you far, man.
Yeah. But the other thing is probably, we've all got some kind of talent, and I don't profess to be, you know, I'm so obsessed with guitar and love guitar, but I don't really think of myself as much of a guitar player as a songwriter that loves guitar. That is the one suit that I was blessed with, and also another reason for my belief that there is a God is I never worked on that. It was very natural from the time that I don't ever remember not writing songs. I've always written songs. I was ADD when I was young, and my mind is always seeing visually scenarios like movies that equate to songs. The times that I'm not writing songs are the times when I allow myself to get in the way of myself. And I overthink it or do anything else. But the actual part of songwriting, I can't take no credit for that. That's just natural gift, whether I'm great or whether I'm not or whatever else. It's just a gift from God. And as soon as I realized that, I thought, that's the thing that I can't, when that calls, I cannot just go, whatever, you know, I'm doing something else.
In respect for that gift.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I totally get that, man.
And I knew that was my strong suit. And I also made a deal. Early on, I said, you know, I know this is a gift. I haven't really worked at this. So God, as long as if you'll give me this gift, I'll always say that it wasn't me. It was you, you know. And I think that's gone far, because I have worked at being a better guitar player, especially in the last couple of years. And I have worked at becoming a more honed songwriter and writing things that I hope will last, and that if I was stepped out of myself, I would look at, you know, and admire and think that that's good. So I have worked on that, but it is it's a gift, and maybe some people have that. So I think if you have it a little bit, you can learn how to write better.
I think so.
But there's some people that don't have it at all. Just like I can't play drums, you know. I could spend a long time trying to learn, and I might get somewhat proficient, but it's not natural to me. But the songwriting and the storytelling is very natural to me, and it's just the makeup of who I am. So discipline-wise, I create things. I create challenges. I say, like this year with the 3 records, I said, you know, what can I do to separate myself from other musicians? Like, I'm not going to be able to play like Joe. You know, I can't, I'm not going to, I'm too old and too irritable to try to learn to.
But that's not you. That's not your playing either.
Yeah. Or jazz. But there's things that I love about somebody's playing like that. And I really admire it. And I know how much work has gone into it. Maybe they're natural at that, the way that I am about songwriting. But so I do know, you know, I'll say, what can I do to separate myself? Well, not only do I want to show that I'm a good songwriter, but I want to show that I can consistently write songs. Like, it's never been an issue with us for us to write songs or write records or put them together. Brian is great. And we get together and put the songs together very easily. So I think at the end of this year, hopefully people will look at me and say, man, that guy can really, like, he doesn't really have any bad songs. He's put out a lot of good work. That's what I hope my legacy ends up being someday. So this year I said, well, I'm going to write 3 albums. I'm going to write one that's kind of a hard rock type record. I'm going to write one that's more of an acoustic type thing, which I love that kind of stuff too. And then at the end of this year, we're going to go in the studio and I'm going to write 10 songs and we're going to bang them out in an old, like a Sun. We may do something live in Memphis. I may bring in a couple other guys to play and do it live in a record like they would in the 50s.
Dude, that's awesome.
Leave the blemishes on it. Another thing that I do that I would suggest to people that they're trying to work on their writing for, like the acoustic record, it's going to have 10 songs on it. And I think, how can I write 10 songs and be creative? How can I, as an artist, put myself in a situation where it becomes very honest and very real? So those 10 songs, each will be tied to a location. So I'm going
like what the Foo Fighters did with that album when they went in all the studios and recorded.
Probably pretty similar to that.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna write one song from my great aunt's house. So I'm going there with a guitar. I'm gonna write a song. What comes out comes out. I'm going to Robert Johnson's grave in Clarksdale or outside of Clarksdale, and I'm gonna write there. I'm gonna sit on the gravestone and I'm gonna write a song. I'm gonna go to, there's a Underground Railroad in Shawneetown, Illinois. There's a hotel where slaves would come through and get out of the South. I'm going there and write a song. And when I hear that song and when those lyrics come about, it physically, mentally ties me to the smell of the grass, the smell of the wood, what the temperature is that day, and everything else, in an effort to, when you hear it as a listener, I want it to be as real as possible, because I think that's one of the things that's helped people attach to the songwriters. When I'm singing about something, I really want to mean it. If it doesn't resonate completely in me, I'm just not going to sing it. So, but those things creatively, trying to do those things, trying to not be cookie cutter and not, do something exactly like somebody else is doing, but being creative, that discipline, I am disciplined about that, but I also enjoy it.
Yeah,
it feels natural to me. So,
Chris, that's a fantastic. Make sure you film wherever you go, man.
That's another thing we're going to do. Yeah.
Definitely, that'd be great content to put out. Really interesting content, man.
Yeah,
that's great, man. I wish you a lot of luck with that. That's really cool.
Thank you.
What are you excited about right now? Because you got a ton of stuff going on.
Well, yeah, I'm excited to be alive and still be doing this. I'm thankful every day that we've had a lot of success in the last couple of years. Every time that we do something, like when we won the hard rock contest, we looked at each other and was like, enjoy this. Is this the best it gets? This could be like, I read, I've seen it even on your podcast, guys talking about it and go, hey man, I looked around, I was like, yeah, this is the pinnacle. I played the Viper Room. That's the pinnacle. We played the Ride Festival in Telluride, and there's a lot of people like, this is the top. This year, there are things outreaching in the year. Like we're doing the Mediterranean cruise with Joe Bonamassa. We had Joe post the thing on Instagram and call us out as his favorite
best thing he's seen since 2019, man.
Yeah. So some of those things, are playing out this year, and we're doing some big festivals this year, and we're doing some other things. So I'm excited to grow this as much as we can this year, and I'm excited to work. Really, I'm really excited just to really hustle and to see what possibilities are. And I think, whenever I look at my heroes, like I was looking at Jimmy Page and some of those guys, they really took music of their idols that really wasn't being heard or accepted and brought it to the forefront. The Stones, all those guys with the early blues, those kids didn't know who Howlin' Wolf was until they
right.
Well, now my son's 12. These kids, they listen to whatever on the radio. but they don't really know Zeppelin, and they don't really know Free, and they don't know, who Paul Rodgers is, and some of the bands that I really liked. And again, I grew up all the kids that I grew up were listening to grunge and whatever else, and I was listening to Hendrix and early blues. So I'm not really from my generation, but anyway, I think it's important now for us, in the next few years, Keith Richards is going to be dead. All my heroes,
who knows?
Yeah, you don't. They could all. Clapton could be gone in the next couple of years. So I want to respectfully carry on that music, and I don't think it's a bad thing now. I've like the Greta Van Fleet thing. They're getting a lot of slack, and I'll be the first one. I don't want to hear somebody copy somebody, but I do think it's important that music, that the classic rock and the guitar rock stuff, deserves to live.
Yeah, for sure, forward. Man. I hope so.
And so I hope to be a beacon of that when those guys are gone. I hope to be the next generation of that. And I don't really care if it's in style or it's not in style, because it's what I love. And so.
Well, it's cool too. As you listen to your records, you could definitely hear the engineering, the production, just as a unit. It has definitely, you could hear the growth of you guys together as the song, as the lineage, because I usually listen to bits and pieces of the whole catalog. And I listen to the whole Ways album, but I listen to bits and pieces of the others, and you can hear the kind of growth of the band over time, which is so cool, which is why I like listening to whole catalogs. You get to hear all that stuff, and I don't see any reason why you won't be, man. Your stuff is great, really, sincerely.
Thank you. We've learned how to record better, and we've learned, about trial and error. We've learned it. When we did the first record, we had never really recorded at all. We didn't, we didn't know much about it. Actually, I'll tell you, I'll try to make this story fairly quick, but this is probably another good one. When we won the hard rock contest, we didn't have any music recorded, and we had Ken Marcus, who was Motley Crue's lawyer and Kings of Leon. No, I think he did. Anyway, he was Kings of Leon, some other big guys. We had these people approaching us, and they were interested in us for trying to pitch us to record label stuff. And we don't have anything recorded, so we put together some money and sold some stuff, and we went to Nashville, and we asked around for an engineer, and we got a hold of this guy that everybody recommended. Some few people recommended. We went in the studio, and we made a deal with the guy and said, how much does it cost for you to engineer the record for the day? He gave us a flat rate, and it was $300 a day, whatever it was, and we paid him that cash. When we finished recording the record, I had a few overdubs to do vocally and some stuff, and we were trying to schedule get down there to do it, and he said, I have to go to Los Angeles, and it'll be a couple weeks. So, okay, all right, whatever, We gets back, and we can't get a hold of it. And finally, we get a letter from his lawyer, and it says that he went to L.A. to get more work for himself, and in the process, he played some music that he was working on. And one of the things he played was our music. And there was 3 record labels that were interested in signing us.
Holy smoke. But they got to get a piece.
He wanted $30,000, and he wanted to produce the next record. And if he didn't get those things, he was not only going to not give us the record back, but he was not going to tell us what record labels were interested in signing us.
What a piece of shit.
Yeah. And
holy crap.
He said it was just business. He saw it as just business. And so
yeah, but assuming he did a good job, maybe I'm being idyllic, and he came back and said, guys, I got great news. This worked. Here's this opportunity. Can we work together again on the next records? Wouldn't you have said, yeah?
Craig, I would have not only done that, I would have probably sold my car to buy him something. I would have been so thankful. I can't even, and I was thinking at the time, I can't tell you how thankful I would have been. It was the thing that I had dreamt of all my life.
Yeah. It's like a happy coincidence all of a sudden for all of you. Like, wow.
So we spent a year with the lawyer going back and forth trying to get the record that we made, that we paid him cash per day to do. And at the end of the year, I mean, I was at a point where I was really considering hurting the guy. I mean, we were very, very upset.
Yeah, man.
And the lawyers finally just told him, say, you know, you're going to get sued, and this is whatever else. And he gave the record. He did. Back. Yeah.
What an asshole. Yeah. What an asshole. Because he doesn't realize that, like, now you guys are successful. And when someone says, hey, who do you want to engineer your record? Probably the first thing they say is, well, we have a couple of choices, but no matter what, don't give us this guy. And here's why. I don't say his name, and I wouldn't go out of my way to cause him any issues like that. If name was brought up, I would just say, you know, I don't recommend that. Or big pass. As much as I want to, I know I'm getting blessed for not trying to go after him. But it was, at the time, I was not nearly. I'm in a different state of mind now. You're all zen now. I was not zen. And people that know me growing up, I was anything but zen. I had a lot of anger issues and angsty and whatever else. But at the time, I was very, very pissed off. But we finally got the record back, and we are now getting the names of the record companies that were interested. And one of them was Hollywood Records, which is owned by Disney, and the A&R guy name was Matt Harris. And we reached out to him, and he goes, hey, man, I tried to sign you guys for like a year. I didn't think you had any interest. You never got back with me. I go, hey, man, we had no idea it was you. You know, we were trying to explain the story to him. I'm sure. Yeah. So he gets in an airplane and flies in to see us play in Evansville. Flies all the way here. It's a sold out show. You know, it's great. He says, I love you guys. You know, he takes us out to dinner. Yeah, I cannot even explain. I can't begin to explain how happy I was. Oh God, I can't imagine. You know, I'm going insane. You know, what a battle. Yeah. And we've and really up to this point, we've battled with a few things, and I'm super excited. And he goes back to LA, and then a week later, he messages and he says, "Hey man, it's a little bit of a delay. My boss got fired. We got a new boss. So you know, hang tight." In the meantime, we had another label. Actually, I had two labels, but one specifically, Mascot Records, flew in to see us in Evansville, and they were interested too. So now I've got a couple labels, and then we've got a third label that's talking, and it's feeling like that we're going to get some good offers because whatever else. So fast forward to 2 or 3 weeks, the lawyers are kind of working on some things. We played a gig at 12th and Porter in Nashville, and I'm carrying out the gear, and my right arm was hurting. And I kind of felt underneath there, kind of feeling like the feel of a muscle was pulled, and I felt this knot underneath my arm. Oh. And so we get back in town, and I thought, well, I should probably get checked. So I go to the doctor, and he says, well, you've got a lymph node that's swole up for some reason. And he goes, it's going to be nothing, but let's get it out anyway. So we go in, he does the surgery, and I wake up, and I see him standing over the bed, and he says, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but you've got cancer. It's in your lymph nodes. Now, this is during the time that these record deals are getting worked out. He told me, he said, you probably have 6 months. And at very best, he said, you're probably going to go to Louisville. They're going to do interferon chemo. And we're going to have to do some surgeries. If the cancer doesn't take you, I don't know that you'll ever play guitar again. This is my right arm. He said, they've got to get all the lymph nodes out. You're going to go through all this stuff. And you know, he's very blunt about it. Well, a couple things real quick. First of all, he said they figured out with skin cancer. He goes, hey, man, you know, you ever had any skin issues back, you know? And I said, yeah, dude, 3 years ago, you took a spot off my back, and
at the time, he called me and I was playing golf with my dad. And he goes, "Hey man, there's nothing to worry about. Looks great. No problems. Have fun playing golf." Well, come to find out, it was skin cancer. The radiologist.
Oh my God. So the
3 years,
radiologist like missed the cancer?
The doctor told me, he said a first-year medical student could have looked at this and said it was cancer. Yeah. So.
Oh, that's worse.
Yeah.
Than the diagnosis to know it was preventable and some incompetent. Oh.
So now I'm really thinking about killing somebody now.
Yeah, man.
I am sick. I'm thinking I'm going to lose my life. My daughter's young. I'm angry. And saying all that to tell this story, if you are going through something cancer wise, and get a second opinion always. If something comes back, especially if it's skin cancer, and you get something, they say everything looks good, get a second opinion, man, because I am lucky to be here, and a lot of people aren't. And so anyway, I had that going through.
So you had did they do like a Sentinel? I think it's called a Sentinel node biopsy where they.
Yeah. Now they just went ahead and took the whole thing out. That particular lymph nodes, because one of the things they worry about with that is it growing on the inside of the lymph node or the outside? And mine had gotten a little bit on the outside, which means it can spread through your body. And at that point, they just don't give you much time. My cousin was married to a doctor, and he had the same thing, and he lasted a year or two. So yeah, I knew it wasn't good. So a couple things happened. I canceled the gigs that we had coming up. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. I didn't want to go. I just had it in my head not to go to Louisville. And I was already connected to Nashville. I love Nashville. And I called Vanderbilt. I was trying to get in. I asked my doctor to try to get me into Vanderbilt. And he said, there is a doctor there that is a world-renowned skin doctor. He's on the dream team for Cancer for America. But it's 6 weeks before you can get in and see him. And he said, Chris, you don't have 6 weeks. You got to do something about this right now. He said, we need to get you to Louisville. Well, and this is another reason. And you go through things in life. When you go through things like I do, it will either make you, it'll solidify your belief in God, or it will hurt your belief in God. I had a fan of ours message, that had seen us in Nashville play, and she said, I see what you're going through, and I'm really sorry. She goes, would you tell me what kind of cancer it is? I said, well, it's skin cancer. And she said, well, I work at Vanderbilt, and I actually work for a doctor that's one of the best.
Was it your guy?
Yeah, was my guy.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Dude, that's
get this. She says,
that's not normal stuff. That's somebody upstairs moving, man.
Yeah. I said, well, I called, and they said it was 6 weeks before I could get in and see him. She messaged me on Facebook. She goes, give me your phone number. And I almost get choked up about thinking about it. No, man,
take it.
She calls
cool.
me. She calls me 10 minutes later. She goes, I got your appointment at 9:00 in the morning. So.
Oh my God.
I go down there the next day. It might've been 2 days. It was right after then. And so I go down there, and they had a trial for a drug that worked for 4th stage cancer, but they were trying it on 3rd stage. And I just knew I knew that I was supposed to be there, and because of things that happened. So I didn't even flinch. I said, yeah, sure. Put me in. And the doctor said, well, it's heavy. It could really hurt you. And we have to sign you up on this thing. There's going to be 100 people in it. And you're either going to get placebo, you're going to get the dose, you're going to get 3 times the dose. And I don't think they told you if you got the placebo, but they called me back. He goes, hey man, you got in the trial, but it's 3 times the dose.
Holy
and he
crap.
said it could really wreck you. And I started the chemo, and by about week 2, every time somebody would die that was in the trial, they'd have to call me, and they'd say, hey, we had somebody that died. And
I'll give you the ability to opt out if you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was determined that I was going to make it through. It was 8 treatments over, I don't know how many months. But I made it to the 6th treatment, and I went into shock whenever they gave me the chemo, and they came in, and I remember going black, and they brought me back out, and then he said, well,
the dose was so heavy, you literally.
Yeah, not only that, I was in hives. I'd been running temperatures, and what it would do was it opened up your immune system to just flush everything, so it was messing with your thyroid. It was doing some things.
Well, man, anytime you mess with your hormones, it's nuts. You get nutty as hell, man. And, I have had that experience only once or twice, thank God. But this whole time, sorry, I want you to finish, but were you playing? What were you doing? Or you were literally just wrapped up in this medical issue and you really couldn't do anything else?
So I was in the studio with a temperature and rash up and down my legs, doing my damnedest to get every song I possibly could out, because I thought I was going to die. I thought it was a possibility I would die. And I thought at the time, I thought I need to get out as much music as possible. Maybe someday these songs will take off. Maybe some money will come back to my kids. I don't know.
Yeah.
And at that point, then I'm really writing to be, it's the most honest thing I can possibly write, because I'm writing thinking that these are my last statements.
Sure.
And that Mountain was that record. So those songs were written during that time I was going through that. And so the song like Mountain and some of those songs that are very, spiritually poignant are from that time period. But I went into, after I came out of shock, I said, I want to finish this chemo. I'm on 6 and there's 8. And he goes, yeah, it can kill you. You had more on 3 doses than what someone would get on the normal dose. And I didn't want to come back 2 years later and have cancer and go, I've only done the rest of the chemo. So I was adamant about doing it. He said, well, if we dope you up with a bunch of Benadryl and we wait about a week, he said, we can try it. So I went in and they did that, and I had some reaction, but I made it through it. And he goes, you're done. He goes, I'm not giving you these. You're not getting the 8th dose. And I was fine with that. And again, it's one of those things where you just know. I thought, well, I got to get through the seventh one or whatever else it was. And so, yes, after on the back of that. So I am doing radiation treatment. I'm at work. I'm going on my lunch break and doing radiation treatments and doing chemo in Nashville and writing a record and recording.
Man. Chris, you're my hero. You're my new hero, man. Seriously, I have so much respect for your attitude about all this, man.
I thought the first thing you do is you realize that you might die. And as soon as you get comfortable going, I could have got hit by a car and not known it.
Right.
And now I know that I could die. So what am I going to do now that I know that it's possible I could die? Is once you get comfortable with knowing that, then everything changes. Your life changes, and your outlook on things changes. And I tell you what, Craig, and I'm not trying to preach to anybody or tell anybody else what to do, but the very first thing that I did was I thought I had read a little bit, and I thought cancer could possibly come around from my doctor would say, you don't want to be around any negativity. Anything that you're harboring inside, or that you're dealing with that's negative, it's going to affect your body one way or the other. So the very first thing I did, I was on the outs with my dad, and I called him. I said, come to the house,
Oh, wow. So you wanted to just clean all the slate, man. And
everybody I had issues with. And I said, hey, I don't know I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm wrong. I'm taking full responsibility for all this. And I'm sorry for anything I've ever done. And I'm sorry for any kind of ill will. And it's my fault. I'll take responsibility. And I love you, and I'm sorry. And I did that with everybody. And I have an ex-wife, man. I have people that have done me wrong. I don't carry any of that anymore. I just don't. It's just not. It's a better way of living, but it also brings on sickness. And it does not, if you're trying to get healthy and you're trying to get through something, the last thing you can have inside you is ill will towards anybody, or resentment, or hate, or
any kind of stress like that is totally messes you up. Yeah, man. It's not good karma in any way.
And listen, here's the thing. I know it's difficult. And if I hadn't gone through that and somebody had said, hey man, you need to forgive everybody. And you need to, I'd be like, hey man, you don't know what's going on with me and my dad, or, you don't know what's going on with me and my ex or whoever. And,
but the thing is that you don't realize until you do it, that you do that for you.
Exactly.
It's not about them. Irrelevant. But you don't realize that until you let it go.
Yeah. So I did that, and I got through that. And then it kind of dawned on me and when I found out I had cancer, I woke up every morning and just stopped. And my daughter was young, and I would pray and I'd say, God, let me teach my daughter how to drive. If you want to take me, that's 5 years. She was 11 at the time. And I said, let me teach my daughter how to drive. And then if I got to go, I got to go. And then the next 5 years, I'll do everything I can to let people know that I'm around here. And I will not be hidden about being a Christian. And I just whatever. But then I got to thinking, I thought, you know what? It's not a coincidence I ended up at Vanderbilt. It's not a coincidence that this got set up and whatever else. So maybe I'm supposed to be here. And if I'm supposed to be here, I need to do the most pure thing that's natural to me and just work really hard on it. And I just kind of cleared my palette of everything else and just really start working on music. And I'm coming up on 8 years out.
Chris.
So they said he gave me 6 months when they first found out. They told me that if I made it to 5 years, first goal was 3 years. You make it to 3 years and you're like, okay, and then you make it to 5 years. And if you make it to 5 years, the prognosis looks much better of it not coming back. If you make it past, 7. So the first year I did scans every month. Second year was every 3 months. Third year every 6 months, up until 5 years. And now I don't have to get scanned anymore. But I had a couple friends that died of skin cancer around that time. Billy Block in Nashville, kind of a celebrity down there, died. He was, I think, 5 or 7 years out. There's no guarantee on anything, but yeah. So that also adds up to the drive and not saying no and not giving up, because I had another friend that went through what I went through, and he said, once you're here, there's an 8-year-old kid, and there was kids whenever I was doing chemo, I would see come in, and they would come in 2 weeks later. I think, you know what? I'm 30-something years old, and I've lived a great life. This kid's 7 years old, and he just died. What do I have to complain about? Yeah. And it changes your mindset about everything. But
dude, thank you, man. 8 years cancer free. I'm really, if you were here, I'd give you a hug right now, man. That was such a great story, man. I'm so happy everything worked out for you. Really am. And I know how tough that is to go through.
Yeah. And you're on, I feel like I'm on, like my friend said, you're on borrowed time after you could have been gone then, and you're not. So what are you doing? So every day I have a purpose.
Yeah.
Some days my purpose is I took my kid to IKEA and bought him a bookshelf. We spent the day together and hit golf balls. That's the purpose. Some days I'm making 3 records this year. The other day, I sit down, I got to finish these. We're going in 2 weeks in San Phillips. I'm going to finish these lyrics. And you do whatever you're disciplined about the purpose, whatever that purpose is. So try to do the best you can on that. But it was very tough for me to go through, but it has made me who I am and completely changed my mindset on something. So in that, I wish I wouldn't have had to gone through it, but I don't have any regrets from the lessons that I learned. So,
well, kudos to you for, I think a lot of people go through that and they forget and they slip into whatever their daily routine is, or they're wasting time on social media or television. And, props to you for like having very high level of awareness that, you don't know when it's over and you're doing fun things with your life.
You still do that, man. We are so weird as human creatures. It takes it's such a short time to forget when you've been blessed. Yeah. Like your neighbor comes over and does a favor for you and does something really kind, and 3 weeks later you're like, man, what's a jerk parking in front of my house? And I knew, I believed in my heart that, I've had friends die of cancer. So I don't want to say that God reaches down and goes, okay, you're not going to die of cancer. We are flesh, and like the trees and everything else, we decay and we die and things happen.
Yeah.
But God did give me strength to kind of get through the situation. And so I was very, very thankful. At 5 years out, 4 or 5 years out, I would do things and I would go, geez, you know what? That wasn't very cool of me to do. Whether it was the way I dealt with somebody or maybe a decision I made or whatever else, or maybe, falling back into old habits whenever I was a young kid or whatever else. And you go, man, I'm lucky to be here and I have all these blessings. Why am I acting like this? But as humans, man, it's so easy to forget. So I don't want to sound holier than thou. I continue to do stupid stuff all the time.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah,
but it's having the awareness to say, get back on the right path for yourself, whatever that is.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody makes mistakes, so that's why with everything, one day at a time that's why they always the best mantra, whether you're recovering from addiction or recovering from life in general, it's just, you could only do what you could do, That's
Absolutely.
Man, I'm so happy that everything worked out, man. What a story.
You,
holy crap. You've definitely had enough, challenges, man. Everything needs to be smooth sailing for you.
It's been a great, I got remarried.
Congratulations, man.
My anniversary was 5 years. My 5-year anniversary was December.
Dude, right on. Congratulations.
Yeah, I had a really tough first marriage that went south at the end of the cancer things. And I won't even go touch into that, but it was really bad. My current wife was the director of the American Cancer Society on the tail end of that. And I met her that way. And I've had an amazing marriage for 5 years. Couldn't be happier there. I have an amazing family. And the last 2019 was probably the best year of my life. So knock on wood, man.
Yeah. Well, 2020 is going to be pretty damn good, I think.
I think so.
Man.
I'm envisioning that. So
yeah, well, you deserve it. Hey, thank you again for sharing all that. It was really cool of you, man. And I think people are going to get a lot out of those stories in so many different ways. Every story that you told was really inspirational. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears. I want to talk about gear. You got this beautiful custom guitar behind you. So talk about what your go-to guitars are right now. Top 3-4 guitars that you're playing. And you could feel free to bring that one over, man.
This one is this one. I have a artist endorsement with Fender guitar that I got probably about 6 months ago. Which is just amazing to me. It's just unreal. It's one of those childhood dreams and fantasies that you had. But when we were in Los Angeles a couple months ago, they took us gave us a tour of the Fender factory, and in the custom shop, Javier Cuba was working on this body. That's a Meteora guitar. Fender had made one as kind of the parallel universe 2 years ago, and I think
Meteora. It's kind of like a jazz master meets
it's a spaceship. Yeah. It's crazy. But I saw the body. I was like, oh, dude, that is so cool. But he hadn't finished it. He was just kind of working at it. And I think the guitar did pretty good for Fender, but didn't do as great as really what the guitar deserves. Mm-hmm. And I think Javier felt the same way. And so he was doing a custom shop version that was a little bit different. And he, at the time when I first got the deal, I told him, I said, well, let's build a guitar, and we built a Telecaster, and the same guy, Javier, built the guitar for me. And it was kind of my dream Telecaster, it just they let me spec it out exactly the way I wanted it. It was just amazing. And that guitar is definitely my top 3. It's one of my favorite guitars ever. It's unique to me. But whenever I was out there and I saw him working on this one, he said, oh yeah, you really like it? Man, I love it. And he goes, well, I said, are you building it for anything particular? And he wasn't. just building it out of love, kind of for what he thought it could be. And so he allowed me to be part of the process to finish it. And so, you know, he let me pick out what kind of neck we were going to do, what kind of frets. We talked about doing the headstock and a sunburst along with it too.
Yeah, that looks really cool.
Yeah, and it is incredibly comfortable. The way it sits against your body when you're standing up or sitting down. If I had, like, a Stratocaster to me is probably one of the most comfortable bodies, just the way it sits against you, you know. But I really feel like if this guitar had came out before the Strat in the late 50s, the Strat would probably be secondary to this thing because of just the ergonomics and how this thing feels. So that is the only Fender Meteora the custom shop's ever made, and
Wow.
It's mine. And I'm absolutely in love with the thing. But I'm hopeful. I'm going to do my best to play it on every stage that we're out this year, and I'm hopeful that it catches on, and I hope some other people end up grabbing them and playing them, because it is a really cool guitar. It's super light. It's the reverse headstock kind of does that Hendrix thing to the lower strings. You know, they're so long, it's spongy, but it's got TV Jones Powertrons in it, and so they're humless, and it sounds like a big, thick. It's like a Strat on steroids meets all the good attributes of a Gretsch. You know, it's got a really good sound to it, and for my gig, it's perfect. But so I've got that one, which I love. I've got the blue Telly. That would probably be my second favorite. They come, you know, people always say, "What's your favorite guitar?" Well, it's the one I hadn't played in 3 weeks.
Yeah, man, totally. Yeah.
Another guitar, they gifted me or gave me a Fender Acoustasonic, and that's I would have never picked the thing up. I would have never bought that guitar. And I'm a snob on acoustics. I had some really high-end Martins, and I've always played Nationals. And I would have walked right by that thing in the Guitar Center and never picked it up. And they said, "Well, just try it." And I am totally in love with that thing. It has the Fender Fishman kind of proprietary system inside of it, so it's got 5 switches with 10 different possibilities. And what that does is, first of all, the Martins, and nothing against Martin or any other acoustic maker, but they sound amazing with a good mic in front of them or in a room. But live, I always struggled getting good sound out of them. You know, they sound tinny, or they sound this or that. And that's the first thing about this guitar is it, with all the different settings in it, I can walk into any room with any PA or any amp, plug the thing in, and I can dial it in so quick. It sounds amazing. The house guys are like, "Whoa." And there's no feedback. And then it plays like a great Telecaster. So easy to play. But then the other attribute that I really love about it is I have a home studio now. And when I'm recording, in the past, I would take a pass with the Martin OM28 or a guitar, and I would do the finger picking. I'd come back, and then I do the strumming, the different guitar, different mic, and I'm layering things. I'm watching EQs, and it's time consuming. With this guitar, I plug straight in. I set it to Dreadnought, and I take a pass, and it sounds just like a Dreadnought. And then with one flick of the switch, I go back, and the EQ's changed, and it's a different sounding guitar, and I can layer it without getting up from the chair. So it makes it so easy. And I did a video on Instagram not too long ago where I took the Martin and played it, and then I played the Acoustasonic right behind it. And my point was, they sounded identical, but we listen with our eyes. Yeah. And if I walk up with this guitar, the preconceived notion of what it sounds like is already that it's thin and it's right. You know, but the sound that I was getting plugged in from a lot of the acoustic guitars didn't sound as good as this one. So people saw that video and were like, "Oh yeah, man, they sound, you know." But I started with the Martin, so when it switches, it gets you, you know, it right. Gets you in. But anyway, I'm very fortunate to have that guitar, and they trusted with giving it to me, and I've played the crap out of it, and that's if I only had 3 guitars, that would be the 3.
The custom
and this
Telly,
one's great.
the custom Meteora, and Telly, the Acoustasonic.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And this one behind me, the other thing that is really great about it, and that I'm super excited about, is if I say to any of my friends, you or anybody else, if I say Telly, the first thing you do is think about, you got Telly players in mind. You know, to me,
Yep.
it's
Immediately.
it's the Country Guys, it's Jimmy Page on the early Zeppelin stuff, it's the, you know,
Brent
whatever.
Mason.
Yeah. Just those amazing Telly players. And with the same with the Strat, you know, the first thing I think is Clapton and Hendrix and even Yngwie or whoever. But this has no history.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay, nobody else is playing that thing. And I loved Hound Dog Taylor and some of those guys that played those weird looking 60s guitars anyway. And that guitar really looks like a guitar that should have been in the 60s.
It does, man. It looks like a spaceship, like you said, man.
Yeah. So I love it. And hopefully, you know, since it doesn't have a preconceived notion, hopefully, especially on the new records, the new sounds I'm getting with it and stuff, hopefully I can create an identity to it that people like. But yeah, it's like 7.5 pounds. You don't even feel that you're playing it. Even with the Bigsby, it's just so comfortable. So
that's cool. We'll enjoy it, man, and well deserved and well earned, man.
Thank you.
Do you remember the first record you ever bought, or maybe it was a tape?
Yeah.
For you?
Yeah.
What was it?
It was man, I don't even know how old I was. My neighbor was my godbrother, and he bought Kiss Alive.
That's funny.
And his parents took it and threw it in the trash can. They wouldn't let him listen to it. They said it was the devil's music or whatever else. And I got it out of the trash can and I hid it underneath my bed. And I had a record player that was like I think it was a Mickey Mouse Club record player or something.
Sure.
Somebody had bought it at a garage sale and given it to me, you know. And I didn't even let anybody know I had the record for a while. I just would stare at it. And then I put it on one day and listened to it, and it's just intoxicating, you know. That's the first record
was a good record.
Yeah. That's the first one that I owned. And like I said, I kept it. I had a bunk bed and I kept it underneath the mattress for forever.
That's funny, man.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Yeah, there was cassettes around, and I remember I had the Boston CD. There was CDs out at that time, but I don't know. I was always old school.
Vinyl guy.
I thought that was so cool. A big, giant, heavy record versus, you know, flimsy CD or cassette. So,
tell me your top 3 Desert Island discs. No particular order, just for now.
Some compilation of Blind Willie Johnson. Whichever, there's quite a few of those out. Something with Blind Willie Johnson. Led Zeppelin 4.
Yeah.
And an album by Los Lobos called Tin Can Trust.
A lot of guitar players have one of Los Lobos records in their not a lot, but it's not uncommon. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I had you asked me 10 years ago who they were or who David Hidalgo was or whatever else, I probably would have shrugged my shoulders and not thought too much about that particular album. I absolutely love. I love the textures. And I don't know if they were on a different record label, but it's not on Spotify. You can't. It's fairly difficult to find. Yeah, so I don't know.
Can't trust.
But it's spectacular. It sounds like a movie. It's like you're on each song kind of puts you in a place. You know.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Great guitar playing too. It's fantastic.
All right, so this is actually a new question I'm going to ask you, Chris. What makes you happy?
What makes me happy? Probably the thing that makes me most happy, just the first thing that comes to mind, is just the people I love being happy and healthy. Just, you know, I think especially after what I've been through, to come home to a house and know that your family's healthy and safe. Yeah. That's probably the thing that makes me happy. And just being in situations where I'm relaxed, you know, comfortable. And
are you good about, like, kind of touched on this. Are you good about, like, when something good happens, you know, sort of like being in the moment, or do you tend to be like, no, now what's next?
I am now. I didn't used to be. I was reading the Black Crowes book, Steve Gorman book, and him talking about Chris Robinson, and they would do something great. Chris would be like, yeah, man. No, that sucks. And we're turning into this. We should have, like, he never could celebrate a situation. And I think you do that when you got a chip on your shoulder. And whenever I was younger, I would do that. Well, yeah, we won the talent show at the county fair, but we're nothing.
Right.
Look at this, and it's not healthy. It is healthy to always want to strive for more and to be better and to go on to bigger things, but to beat yourself up. But now I always put things in perspective and again, I'm going to Europe this year, man. I get to take my wife to Italy, France, and Spain and play on a boat. It's like,
how cool is that?
Yeah. Do I wish I had, 100,000 Instagram followers, or I wish I had, this or that, or lived somewhere else, or drove something different? Well, maybe, whatever.
Yeah.
But I know how. There's a lot of guys that I went to school with, man, that are stuck in dead end jobs and bad relationships, whatever. I'm thankful and grateful for everything every day, just about. So,
well, it's interesting you said that. When I was in NAM, someone turned me on to some book. It was a book of a philosophical, like a philosophy kind of life book. I don't remember the name, and it was very science based, which I have no. It was like a 300-page book of science, and it was just too much for me. But I liked the concept, so I did some searching on it online, and I found like a 20-page, summary of these 10 or 12 things about it. And one of the things they said in there, they said the way to create like just a vortex of energy behind you is to celebrate all your victories, no matter how small. Yeah. And I thought about that and I said, man, that makes a lot of sense, because if you have little things that you're celebrating and you're all excited about that, I mean, just karmically and energy wise, it does make sense that you're going to keep building that up, as opposed to, and I used to not be that way, to be just, same as you. I'd be like, well, what's next? Okay, great. I did this today, but what about tomorrow? And I've totally really changed, and it's just a lot more relaxing.
One of the things, and I think I'm not a person that doesn't think science and spirituality shouldn't go hand in hand. I think they absolutely do go hand in hand.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think science can prove some of the things about spirituality. But one of the things, whenever I was sick, the book of Job in the Bible, just the story of Job, I thought was incredible. And one of the things that I learned that has really helped me, and I would agree with everything you just said, in addition to that, is when things go bad, be thankful. To find something that is good, even when things were the absolute worst for me, I would say, God, thank you that I got to spend 2 hours with my daughter today. Thank you for that. And if you can learn to be thankful when things are absolute shit, and then you can recognize when good things come, man, I just think it's a key to a happy life and success. And I noticed that people that are successful, I know you've done the same thing. You start noticing, hey man, these people are successful and these are the things that they're doing. And successful people do that,
Right. And being positive and finding the good in any situation is definitely one of them. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Best childhood memory?
Probably that piano recital, my first piano recital. In sixth grade, man, we had a band called, I think it was called Mercury, or I don't remember. We won the Hopkins County talent show in the little town I lived in. And I look back and I think about things that really, that was pretty amazing.
You're like, what, like 20 minutes or a half hour from Nashville or something like that?
Where I live now is 3 hours from Nashville.
3 hours from Nashville. Okay. So
I grew up 2 hours from Nashville. Yeah.
Okay.
I used to love Nashville, but not so much anymore.
Why not?
It's just so touristy now. It's just changed so much.
The traffic is incredible there, man.
The city was never built to house that kind of traffic, and it's ridiculous now. But I still love Nashville. But I used to be when I first started playing down there, I was absolutely in love with it.
Yeah, people are very nice for the most part. Really supportive musicians.
Yes.
Most exciting experience you've had?
We toured we toured Scandinavia last year.
Wow.
And we played Norway, Denmark, Sweden. We played a festival in Sweden called the Iris Festival, and it was just very well put on. But literally, Craig, behind us, the stage, the back of the stage was towards the ocean. And it's Åland is a little island off Sweden, and the water comes in, and you can walk out about 50 yards, and it's about up to your knees. But the water was literally 20 yards behind the stage, and the sun was setting when we played. And we stayed in a castle when we were in Denmark. It just, you have to pinch yourself then. And then not only that, but go. And I tell students and tell friends this all the time, music, playing guitar and writing songs got me that opportunity, so that's pretty amazing as far as musical memories.
That's awesome, man. Did you play with any of the Swedish bands over there? There's a lot of good music.
There is so many good blues rock, especially Swedish bands. We did, and I can't remember a lot of their names. It was amazing to me. One in particular, it was really great. We played with, but they couldn't speak a lick of English.
Oh, really?
But they sang in English.
Yeah,
and they would like cover Howling Wolf, or they do Crossroads and sing it great. But when you went up, one guy, he had a 70 Strat. I was like, dude, that Strat's so cool. What year is that? He had no idea what I was saying.
Wow.
So that was kind of cool. But yeah, there's a good blues rock scene over there in general.
Really good. I've had 5 or 6 bands on there from Sweden. Really good.
Love it.
You have any hobbies or interests outside of music, Chris?
Cars and motorcycles, anything with an engine in it. My dad growing up he owned an automotive store, had a couple tire and car stores growing up, and was a real blue collar guy. And I started working on cars when I was 13.
Oh, great.
I worked for him until I was early 20s, but anything with an engine. I had motorcycles whenever I was super young. I've always been a motor, anything, cars, motorcycles, I've always loved.
Is your dad still around?
He is.
Yeah. Did you guys keep it together, or?
Yeah. We had at the time that we were kind of falling out, it's just stupid stuff. You think about it, and I think, why would we? My grandfather had died, and I was probably a little closer to my granddad than I was my father, but there was some ill sentiment probably after that, and maybe, a little bit of animosity on my dad's end, that maybe I was a little closer to his dad than he was. I don't really know. I think that I was probably pretty immature in the way I handled some situations. I don't know, but yes, we're fantastic.
Who's not, like, when you're a kid, you look back and like, wow, that was a stupid decision making, I did.
Yeah. Well, and I was in my 20s when some of that stuff happened, and it's like we talked about the other day. I don't think you really know anything before you're 25.
Yeah,
I think
if you're lucky.
I got married when I was young. I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, and being adopted, I thought I really wanted to have kids, because I wanted to look in the eyes of somebody that had the same blood that I did.
Yeah.
So I got married really young, and I had kids, really young, but anyway, yeah, it's. You look back now and you go, you're just much wiser the older you get.
Thank God.
I don't want to hear a preacher that's 25 years old. I'm like, what do you know?
Yeah.
Give me somebody that's 80 years old. My great aunt that I talked about, she lived to be 103.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. And I did the speech at her funeral, because my other aunt had died prior to that, and the guy got up and talked about her, and he was telling her she was an angel and this, and he didn't even know her. She wasn't an angel. She was, whatever else. And so when my aunt died, the preacher got up there and said, "Oh, she's an angel. She's God in heaven." I get up there and say, "Hey, man, this thing about my aunt, we sat in the front yard and drank beer."
I was going to say moonshine and breaking chicken necks, man.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I told the truth about her, and hopefully somebody does that about me. But yeah, now that's some wisdom. You find somebody that's that age. She had some wisdom.
103. That's great, man. Hopefully you get that same lineage.
Yeah.
Tell me the toughest decision you had to make, Chris, or the most difficult thing you had to do.
You know, music wise, it's just not giving up at a lot of different points. There was a lot of points that I could have thrown in the towel. And I think, you know, looking at my career, Craig, I probably never really went after it hard enough until the last 5 years, because my dad and my folks really wanted me to get a college degree and have that safety net. So I got a degree. Then I had a kid, you know, and when you have a kid, I'm not the kind of guy that was just going to take off and leave her at home and go tour the world when those opportunities. I passed up on opportunities, and put other things first. And it's a double-edged sword. It's good, probably, being somewhat responsible, but in other ways, had I moved to Nashville or LA right out of college or early on, it may have been a different path. It may have been a shorter path to where I am now.
Sure.
Where again, it could have been, this could all be fate and could be exactly the way it's going. But most people, I don't think, at least in music, stick it out the way that we've stuck it out.
Yeah, and a lot of people sacrifice. One of the things that I hear from a lot of people is, we didn't have kids because I had this career. I often wonder, should I have had kids? Or, you know, I feel like I might have, you know, stuff like that. So, you know, you made it work. So good for you, man. Yeah.
But that's tough. That's always a tough decision.
It's having kids is tough, man. There's a lot of sacrifices you got to make. People don't realize. I didn't realize how much sacrifice it was.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
2 more questions, Chris. What is the most important lesson that you've learned from being in this business?
The very first thing I would say to somebody that was getting in the business is, do you really have the skills to do this? Because one of the things I learned about Nashville was that my idea of Nashville was that it was full of 200, 300,000 musicians that were better than me. They were all trying to make it, and it was going to be, you know, really tough. But what I found out in Nashville was it's really a bottleneck. There's about 10% of the population of the musicians that are great, and there's about 90% that aren't great, but just to have that dream. And those people can spend a lot of, you know, they come in with a lot of wealth and then just blow it. Or, you know, you have some people that have a preconceived notion that they're good. And I've never thought that I was better than another professional musician, but I've always felt that we were professional enough that if we worked hard, we could get to a level where we could sustain it. So figure out if you're that, if you, just like, if you want to be a CPA, are you good at math? You know, can you do that? Because if you're artistic, why in the hell are you trying to be a CPA? But if you have the skills, and then the thing that you really got to know is, it's not, you have to absorb and learn how to turn difficulty and failure into success. Yeah. If you cannot do that, if you are going to get your feelings hurt every time things don't work out or go soft, then you're never going to make it. And you have to decide early on, I'm in this. If it takes 6 days or 6 years, I'm in this. Because if not, the first time things get bad, you're going to be out. And if you get lucky and make it, then the only thing that's going to happen 6 months after you make it, first thing that gets tough, you're out.
Yes.
So, you know, like I said, my dad was a football coach growing up. He was very disciplined and probably had that work ethic. And I haven't applied that to everything that I could have. The sink in there probably needs to be fixed or something else. But the things that you're passionate about.
Who the hell wants to spend time doing that, man? I know that's like the last thing on I got stuff like that around here, and I walk by the house and I see little things here and there, and I'm like, just a reminder.
My advice would be not to learn how to deal as much with the success as deal with the failure.
Yeah.
And if you really believe in yourself, then when you do fail or you don't win, you just don't buy it. Like there's times that we did, but this band, we just haven't had that much turbulence back at us. And I'm very blessed and lucky that people just really dug this band. But the other bands that I was in prior to this that we tried, at the moments that I believed in it, we didn't win or didn't get where we were wanting to go. I would just go, they're just wrong. I don't care. I'm sticking with it, and we're, we'll make it happen. You got to be tough, man. With anything, you got to be tough.
Yeah, man. Like I said, life's not for the weak. But one thing you did have a lot of faith in, and you worked hard at it, is to have your own unique style. And there's a lot of comfort in that going into that. Like, you never had to be worried about, oh, they sound like this, or this is another version of that. You really have your own thing, man. Yeah. And I think that's great.
You have to do that, whether you are doing podcasts or whether you're making music or whether you're an artist or whatever else. You have to create something that you are the best at.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, then you're going to have other people come along and look at AC/DC. Right. Look at how many bands came along after that. I mean, there's some great bands that kind of did that. The Four Horsemen or the Cult at times. There's bands but nobody was as good at being AC/DC other than AC/DC.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Even if it's somebody like Dylan or Neil Young, I go, well, I don't know if I really love the voice, but they're so comfortable in what they're doing, and it is so, honest about what they're doing.
Yeah.
That people recognize. People see our show that are old folks, and we play show and grandparents are there or some, whatever else, but they dig it because it's honest,
Yes.
They see that, and I'm the same way when especially these days, when I see something and I can tell when somebody's full of it, and I can tell when somebody's really digging it. And when they're really digging it, man, and it's honest, I don't care if they don't believe the same things I do, spiritually. I don't care if they're on the different side of the aisle that I'm on. It doesn't really matter. I'd rather hear somebody that's in love with what they're preaching or what they're working towards.
Right. They're passionate and sincere.
Yeah. It's got I'm all about that,
Yeah.
So
I agree with you, man. Hey, last question, Chris, and I cannot thank you enough for your time, and just, you're a very lovely guy, and thanks for being so open and sharing all your stuff.
Absolutely, man.
Biggest change in your personality over the last 5 to 7 years, and how much of that change is intentional and how much is a natural part of aging?
Well, being 8 years out of cancer, that's the last 7 years, is a focus of, just not taking things for granted. And like you said, enjoying any kind of success. I think being thankful for where that success comes from. If you're religious, at the big picture, you can say, well, that comes from God. I'm thankful that my wife allows me to go play rock and roll and supports me and doesn't give me a hard time.
Yeah, of course.
I'm thankful that Joe Bonamassa doesn't really do that with bands where he throws them out and says, hey, I'm really into this band. And he did that for us. I'm at a point where I celebrate and thankful for almost everything, because I had days where there was a lot that I could have, got down about or whatever else. And so I am, the last, and I got to give credit to my wife too. I've been remarried. If we're talking the last 5 to 7 years, I've been remarried during that time. And like they say, a good one will make you and a bad one will break you.
Hell yeah.
I've been blessed, but my mindset, I believe that my mindset is continuing to help successful things. And it's so important, your attitude. So.
Well, I think your attitude is great, man. I'm so happy you're cancer free, and I'm excited to see where you guys are going and have the cold stares, have you back here in a few more years, man, and see, what the next chapter is like, man. I'll have to call someone to get through to you next time. You won't take my call.
People say that, man. I'm like, dude, it's always funny when we do something that's great and somebody will walk up and they'll say, like when we played Nashville a couple weeks ago, somebody said, oh man, I knew you would do this. Like,
Yeah.
well, I'm glad you did, man. Because there's a lot of times I thought I would be, caddying at the country club. I didn't know,
No, man, you guys are going to be doing great stuff, man. You're very authentic, very original, and you got something great here. And obviously other people are vibing on it. So
Thank you very much.
let me tell people where to find you. First of all, I didn't ask you this before. You said you did lessons. If somebody wants to take lessons from you, how do they get a hold of you?
I teach at a shop here in Evansville called Musicians Den. It's just a local shop, and Brian does the same thing, and that's worked out really well for us. When we're on tour, then the students are cool about us being gone, and when we're back in town. So when we're in town, we both teach. And
so the Lions Den is called. What'd you say?
Musicians Den.
Musicians Den. Sorry about that.
Yep.
I'm thinking.
And that's Lions here in Evansville.
Great. Yeah. So if you're in Evansville or in the Evansville area, go to Musicians Den if you want to take lessons from Chris. Couple of things. First of all, they got a great website. It's at thecoldstairs.com. That's stairs, STARES. If you have not heard of the Cold Stairs, really do yourself a huge favor and listen to them. Download all their recordings. The last album, Ways, is fantastic, but I mean, everything they've done is really good. They are on, you could follow them and like them on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at, it's basically the Cold Stairs. There's a new record coming out in May, first of 3 records for 2020. Sure. Any idea you want to talk about it? Any teasers?
Yeah, man, it's heavy, but not in a kind of a heavy metal kind of way. It is. We're doing an acoustic record, so this record's no acoustics and no ballads. It's I try to make this record as a love letter to the records that I loved from the 70s. So, I'm as those guys retire, I'm trying to produce something that I think would hold ground with the albums that I love, Zeppelin and Free and all those stuff. So it's just a straight ahead rock record, top to bottom. It is the absolute best that I have right now as far as riffs, and it does have it does touch on a couple topics lyric wise that we've never done before, and so I think it's gonna be interesting. Guitar wise, it's going to be a really fun record to make. So awesome.
And you have an email list, right, at thecoldstairs.com, so people can get on there? Okay. Yep. So get on the email. Again, it's the Cold Stairs, STARES. On May 1st, these guys are playing at the Viper Room in LA. And on May 2nd and 3rd, they will be at the Nowhere Festival in Joshua Tree, California. They are playing on Joe Bonamassa's Blues Cruise, which is already sold out. Also, there's a festival called Rock USA in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, in the first week of July, and the Cold Stairs will be playing there, and as well more festivals. The Louder Than Life Festival, and I can't read my own writing. I'm sorry.
Aftershock, yeah.
Aftershock.
Yeah. Louder Than Life's in Louisville, and Aftershock's in Sacramento.
Sacramento, yeah.
Lucky enough to do them both this year.
And that's Metallica's headlining those. It's the Louder Than Life Festival in Louisville. That's your home crowd. That's going to be pretty cool, right?
Yeah, we will definitely get to see some local people there. That's going to be pretty exciting.
You ever play with the Headhunters?
No, but I know Greg Martin from some other people just kind of distantly. The town that I grew up in, man, within 30 minutes of where I grew up, Kentucky Headhunters, Everly Brothers, John Prine, Chris Knight. There's so much, great songwriting, great talent around there. So love those guys. Yeah.
Well, Greg Martin's one of the nicest human beings you'll ever meet, man.
I've always heard that, man.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, again, in the fall, Louder Than Life in Louisville and Aftershock in Sacramento, California. Metallica's headlining those. The Cold Stairs will be playing. And, man, I'm really excited that you got all these records coming out this year. If you want to come back on the show when it drops, man, I'll be happy to promote it and support it, man. So
absolutely, man. Would love to.
Chris, thank you for everything. Anything else that I didn't say or anything else you want to touch on as far as promotion-wise that I missed?
I don't think so, man. I think we covered it all.
All righty, man. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Let me say goodbye and then we'll wrap up. Thank you, brother. And best of health to you and continued success to you and your family, man.
Thank you so much, Craig. You too.
Everybody, thank you. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Support Chris Tapp and the Cold Stares. Go to the Cold Stares, STARES.com, and check out all the stuff they got going on. They also on all the socials, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And come see them in concert and say hello. And tell them to get down to Florida. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice. Don't forget that, and choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. Chris, thank you for everything, brother.
Thank you, man.